I do.
Can you see it?
It's on.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I just wanted to let you know that we are officially live streaming our meeting today. Thank you so much for your time. I would like to thank everybody for coming and just appreciate the fact that you were willing to volunteer. This is our capacity building evaluations team for the ITN that we have put out. And at this time, I will call our meeting to order. It is now 10:13 a.m. and we will get started. For purposes of roll call, if you guys would like to take the time and we can go around the table and introduce yourself so that everyone here in our audience watching us can know who members of our team were, and we can start on this.
And just as a note, because we are here and we are live streaming, you have your microphone in front of you and the little green light should come on after you press the button. And we do ask that every time you speak, you make sure that that microphone is turned on. And then when you're not speaking, you can turn it off. Thank you.
And one last thing, I'm sorry, Ms. Gaines, if you want to pull that forward towards you, I had to do that as well so I could reach the on and off button. There you go.
Okay.
On.
Yeah,
Sounds like it. Great. Good morning. I am Tara Bivens. I'm an external evaluator for this ITN. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Talithia Edwards, local community advocate here in Tallahassee.
Morning, I'm Paul Mitchell, a member of the Children's Services Council.
Good morning, I'm Irene Gaines. I'm a volunteer.
Thank you so much once again for your time. At this time, I would like to turn it over to our Executive Director, Ms. Tika Rose Green, and she'll share a few words and we'll get started.
So good morning. Thank you to those joining us online as well as our evaluations committee here in person and members of the audience here in person. So as you know, you all served as the evaluators for our capacity building RFP. We are very thankful for your service. Part of the council's wish is that we use external evaluators and volunteers to ensure that we've got all kinds of expertise when we are looking to acquire services and contracts for the council. So this capacity building RFP is to help our providers that are in the community ensure that they are ready to apply for funding if they did not receive funding, working with them on any areas that were deficient, and also for those that do receive funding if it turns out that we need to provide some additional assistance. So with that, I think we're ready to turn it over to our procurement manager, Holly McPhail.
Thank you, everyone. I am, as she said, Holly McPhail, Special Projects Manager, and for the purposes of this process, serving as a procurement officer. I would, before we continue, would like to have a motion from a member of the committee to approve the agenda as presented before you.
I'd like to move to accept the agenda that we have in front of us.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. So for the purposes of the record, that was Ms. Edwards making the motion and Mr. Mitchell seconding the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. With that, Ms. Clay, is there any general public comment?
Yes, we have public comment from Mr. Rob Renzi.
Mr. Renzi, feel free to join us at the podium. Thank you. The microphone should be on.
We good? All right, so Rob Renzi, I'm the CEO of Big Ben Cares CarePoint. And in full disclosure, I'm also the treasurer of the board for UPHS. You should have saw my recommendation letter in the ITN. Just wanted to elaborate a little bit and some concerns. So we partnered with UPHS on a capacity building grant with Emory University. That was to perform capacity building for 3 very small, non-ever grant funded before agencies, 2 of which also applied for your CSC summer funding. Neither one scored high enough to get it. So that was after about 7 months worth of work, in addition to Emory technical assistance. But our program was successful enough that we also applied for a $500,000 grant from Gilead Sciences to take those agencies and then convert them into HIV testing facilities, which we are currently doing, which has more ongoing capacity. But my concern is those are 18 months to 24-month grants to work with 3 and 4 agencies. And we are spending way more than what you have allocated to work with a much larger group. And there is already some overlap. So we've worked with 2 of those for the better part of 7 months, and they couldn't do it yet. So just something to keep in mind of how much work is going to be involved, especially if we're talking about elevating grassroots agencies that have never received funding before. So our capacity building with UPHS is ongoing. They have to help them with invoicing and all the things that you're going to want. And my reporting is way less than what you're going to be asking. So just something to keep in mind going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Ms. Clay, is there any other public comment?
There's no additional public comment.
Thank you. With that, we'll move into the ITN evaluation review and ranking. So for the purposes of this, what we'll do is kind of go through each of the line items and be able to discuss with one another.
Check the address again.
If you would like to take a seat right up here in the middle up there, that'd be great.
A little frazzled at the moment, but otherwise. fine.
So I'll ask you to just press the button on your microphone in front of you, Ms. Gershman. And then, oh, maybe.
No swearing.
If you'll just, for the purposes of the record, and just to let you know, we are live streaming this and it is being recorded, but if you don't mind just introducing yourself for the record as a member of our evaluation team.
Oh, okay, sure. My name is Barbara Gershman. I'm retired 15 years, most lately with the Barbara Bush Foundation. And my background is that I used to write RFPs, grant proposals, and train people all over the state and writing grant proposals. So I think that's why Liza got me.
Well, we're glad that you're with us and where we're at in the agenda. So all of your packets you'll have in front of you is a copy of the agenda, the composite scores, which has everybody's scores. That's also being broadcast on the screens. And for anybody who's watching, if you want to have access to that, it is available on the CSC Leon website under public information. Anybody in the public can access that document currently. And your third page, which is not yet posted, is your individual score sheet. As we dive into this process and kind of do something like we like to call inter-rater reliability, this is your opportunity to discuss your scores amongst yourself. And if you choose that you want to make an edit, you would just note that on the document in front of you and make sure that you turn that in to me before you leave as we move forward. Okay. All right. So as we start the process and kind of thinking through the various scores that we have, and what we'll start with is our service line 1 and kind of going through, you do not have to speak if you do not want to speak, but we're going to go around the table. If there's any comments that you would like to provide, justifying the score that you gave, whether it was a high score or a low score, and voicing any questions or comments that you have.
Holly, before we get started, when typically you evaluate proposals, the S at the end of the word proposal is appropriate. In this case, it's not. Before we get started, so I had a very difficult time grading because I thought the proposal answered our questions and answered it well. But when I evaluate, I'm evaluating usually, one candidate versus another, or one candidate or one proposal versus two others or three others. In this case, we didn't have that opportunity. And so my scores were rather bland. They were, every single one of them was in the excellent category at the low end. Only because I don't know, maybe there was a perfect proposal out there, but we didn't receive it. I was hoping, maybe Sika, you can speak to this. Holly, you might be able to speak to it. I don't care who speaks to it, but the idea that in a community like this, that we only have one proposal. Two, are these services already being provided? I kind of got the answer for the gentleman's comments earlier. And if there's only one out there and they're already actively engaged in this sort of thing through other grants, is there a need for it? Not having nothing to do with the proposal, but I need to put that on the table because eventually I'm going to vote on this. And I really want to feel much more comfortable about why we're doing this. And I don't right now.
So I will start and then I'll let Holly jump in as the procurement manager. So what I can tell you is, and you are aware, but really for, I think, the rest of the evaluation team, when the council was discussing recommendations and things that we wanted to put in place as a council to ensure that we had the best cadre of providers who would be able to meet our muster when it came to providing services, it was agreed that we needed to look at how we build that capacity and how we work with them. Specifically out of the needs assessment, looking at how many organizations are already doing evidence-based practice, how many are doing research-based practice, how many are doing promising practices, and quite frankly, how many are just doing what they see needs to be done in the community with no real curriculum or methodology behind how they're doing it. I think the eye-opener for us was the summer funding. And when we had those applications come in, we literally, during the information session, had people leading some of these organizations that were doing great work that didn't understand the nuances of ensuring that their model is working properly, is properly documented, and things of that nature. Additionally, the council decided that they really didn't want, you all really didn't want us to try to do that in-house. So hiring people to try to work with the individual providers to ensure that they've got everything they need to be able to be ready to apply for our funding because we had some outlets in the community that already have a bit of an expertise in that. The last thing I will say is that when we did the informational session on this RFP, I have to tell you, we had 10, 15 people on that informational session, not duplicative. So different organizations that felt as though they wanted to get the information to see if they had the capacity to be able to apply to this RFP. We get the respondents and we only got one. And so what that told us is while we had those organizations out in the community, they may not be or feel that they can absolutely look at what we are asking them to do and be able to do that properly. I will also tell you that when we're looking at the current organizations who have applied, they do have relationships, financial relationships with the city, the county, to do similar services. But I'll tell you that their internal capacity and being able to have the ability to touch as many of those organizations as possible is limited by the funding. And so I believe, as you saw in the proposal, they more than likely would need to have someone else come on board to specifically expand their reach for the purposes of our proposal. So if I am asked, do I really think we need this? My answer would be yes. I think we need these services. I believe the council should engage in these services to really help expand the capacity of what organizations who have been trained and are working to do to be able to expand their reach, and specifically look at what we want in applicants, what we need them to do, matching up what our needs assessment says and our priorities says to ensure that any programs that are going to apply are speaking directly to that. I'll turn it over to Holly to just add to those comments.
So as it goes with the procurement process, so I'm going to speak specifically to our procurement policy that we have in place and the process that is involved with kind of how we're going to handle the approach. Yes, usually you will, in an RFP or an ITN, you might receive multiple proposals. Had that been the case, what we would do is use your scoring to then go into a secondary conversation that then goes into this idea of ranking them, where you're comparing them against one another. The first step per our policy is to rank the proposal based on the published criteria that was in the document. So this document that she has in front of her that you was replicated into your evaluation manual. And so every step that you took and how you kind of ranked it based on that score was independent of all the external factors, and to just rank that. We have to go through that exercise. On your agenda, you'll see the piece where we talk about going to, I think it's item 6, the recommendation to determine if any of the responses would move forward into the negotiation process. You also have the option to reject all. So in a scenario where you have just one response, actually, if you even had 7 responses, you could use the option of reject all. And there are kind of specified reasons in statute that would justify that. And if we get to that, when we get to that conversation, I'd be happy to kind of tell you what they are, but I'll kind of hint at it now. Usually it's either on us as the developer of the procurement process that we were not specific enough of what we wanted. We were too ambiguous about what we wanted. And there's like a couple of other, or the need that we have has substantially changed since publishing that. Those would be some reasons that we could do a reject all and then re-advertise. The kind of flip side of that is if all the proposals that came in, if all of them exceeded the budget line, you could do a reject all. Or if you feel as the evaluation team that the response, that there's substantial doubt in the ability of any of the responses to be able to meet the substantive need as described in the procurement. So we will have the exact conversation that you had, but for the purposes of the procurement, we do have to go through the exercise of talking about the scores for all the responses. Yes, in this case, it was just one. To kind of talk about that and kind of finalize that, then to open up that exact conversation that Mr. Mitchell, you alluded to, of usually in a procurement, in a competitive procurement, there's competition. And in this case, we feel that we advertised, that we had interest, that it was noticed well, it was kind of advertised in all the places. We received some questions. We received a few phone calls, which I then said, please submit your questions. So all of that kind of took place. We did follow kind of all of those rules, and how it kind of played out in the end is that 2 of the potential candidates chose to collaborate on a proposal as opposed to compete, which is something that our council has repeatedly said is something we'd like to reward. With that said, happy to field any more questions before we dive into the legal part of discussing the scores, before we get into that deeper conversation of, do we want to move forward into negotiations?
Just so you know,
You want to try mine?
the council has the ability to reject all for really no reason. We can just decide, you know what, at this point, thank you very much for the responses. We choose not to. So I appreciate your comments, Holly. Going back to really the crux of my question, Sika, you answered it. It's sort of like, sounds to me like perhaps we need training for capacity building.
Yeah, I thought that too. I'm sorry.
Just limited budget, I'm just saying.
I had this, I'm glad you brought it up because I had a similar concern. And it also maybe within that, it was very obvious that the two combined rather than compete, but there's no division of tasks, duties, or anything between the two.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to make sure we're not violating the process because now I hear Ms. Gershman getting into some discussion. So
Okay, don't talk about it.
If you could just hold that.
Sure.
Let's get through the legal.
But no,
piece,
his
and then we
question
can have
though, his
that-
question is excellent.
Yes.
And another concern might be that what other organizations in this area could possibly serve that many, have already relationships with that many organizations. I'm not saying you wrote to them. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that in my thought, I just thought these are probably the only people that could do it.
Let's jump in.
Sorry, these microphones sure are fun. All your points are well noted, and as we go through, that will probably come out in the discussion. So kind of thinking through that, the service line technical assistance for grant seekers, I just want to clarify what that specifically is. It is to provide TA for anybody who might be applying to our grants specifically. So, excuse me, I shouldn't call them grants, our community investment opportunities. So as the CSC publishes its very specific RFPs or RFAs or RFQs or whatever the procurement might be, as it publishes those very specific opportunities, the selected capacity builder will work in tandem with CSC staff to prepare application, to help community providers prepare their applications directly to that application, to that unique process. So it's not just general capacity building, it is responding specifically to the questions. That's what, in essence, service line 1 would involve. Training would be involved with that. But again, they would work in tandem with us to make sure that that training calendar schedule, the things of that nature are unique to us, and anyone who would like to apply or be a part of those trainings could be. So category 1 under service line 1 was background, general experience, and reference in relation to that. Across the 5 scores with a 15 points available, it was an average 12.8, the lowest score being a 10, the highest score being a 15. When you calculate the percentage of that, it comes out to about a solid B, an 85.3. And thinking about that, is there any comments from any of the evaluators to share why, if you would like to say why you scored low, why you scored high, why you scored middle, anything that you'd like to kind of go on the record for? Ms. Gershman.
There's one, and this is one of my bigger points of the thing. Because again, these individuals are going to be training people in writing grant proposals and that kind of thing. It did concern me that one of the partners in the reference section had 2 references from 2 different groups that were almost identically worded. Now, typically when that happens, they're given a draft they sign, which is not a reference in my opinion. And what I'm saying is, hopefully after this is done, the note might be made to them, be very careful when you talk about getting references for a grant proposal. So that was a biggie for me.
Thank you, Ms. Gershman. Any other comments from evaluators?
I'll make a comment because I actually scored the 15. I was excited when I saw the application. Did think we would have a much more competitive process of people wanting to actually apply, because again, there was a lot of interest and a lot of conversation around it. But knowing the relationship and the work of UPHS and UNI together, when I saw the collaboration, I was like, oh, this could be pretty good, knowing what they both do. And so reading the background and everything with my own personal knowledge and experience, I felt like that was a perfect, background and general experience, right? And so even without the references or, maybe having a support letter that was right, that was sent out, I was able to score them with a solid 15 for that particular category.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Any other comments from any? You do not have to comment if you do not want to.
I'm going to make, I'm not going to comment on each one. I'll just make this comment up front. As I said, I think it's the proposal met absolutely every one of our asks. And the reason I scored them the way I did was each time it was in the excellent category. Again, it's the, I got a range. I said it's an excellent proposal. By the way, if we are selecting someone to help people write proposals, it better be excellent. I mean, otherwise, it'd be like me trying to teach someone rocket science. The thing's not getting off the ground. So it has to be excellent, and I think that the proposals are excellent. And to Lethia's point, the collaboration between the two, both of them, in my mind, bring a little something different to the table. Again, combined, I think it's a cool team. To Barbara's point, though, I don't know who's going to do what at all. I just saw, a proposal, impressive groups of people at the top, and but so that's why I graded it the way I did. It's excellent. I didn't give it excellent plus, but it's excellent. So each one of the categories, that's why I graded the way I did.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I will make the comment that as we do decide, if the evaluation team chooses to advance this particular proposal to the negotiation phase, some of the comments that you've made about wanting to really know who does what comes into that negotiation phase. And that's part of the reason why we chose to do an ITN and not have a super specific contract as we might had we done an RFP. This gives that flexibility to have them come back with a best and final. And but I'll dive into that a little bit more when we get to item 6, making that decision. Category 2 is the specialized qualifications and experience. And so we'll start specific to service line 1, that's that TA for grant seekers. Again, points available were 15. There was an average of a 13 with an 86.7 when we kind of break that out into a percentage. The lowest score was an 11. The highest score was a 15. Do any members of the evaluation team care to make a comment specific to service line 1? And again, you don't feel compelled. Sorry, category 2, but specific to service line 1, meaning TA for grant seekers. In the scoring for members of the public, in the scoring, category 1 was scored for one time for both. So those should be the same scores, whereas category 2 was unique to that service line. Seeing no takers, I'll move to category 3. So this is the quality, clarity, and responsiveness of the service description. So this one was a little bit more detailed, making sure that they included everything and kind of going through all of that. This was I like to say, meat and potatoes of the proposal for service line 1. And for members of the public who are listening, any applicant could, if they wanted to, only apply for one service line or another. And so that's why the bulk of the points were placed into this category. Again, points available were 50. The average was a 41.8. The highest was a 48. The lowest was a 30. So that brought the percentage average to an 83.6. And at this point, I would like to ask if any members of the evaluation team would care to comment on their score.
I
Ms. Kirschner?
found, I'm going to ask about the clarity. I don't have what I wrote to you in front of me, but it had something to do.
Ms. Grishman, it's actually on the third page
Oh, it's on
of
the
your,
third
the
page.
fourth page of your packet. All your comments are there for you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, this was me. Okay. It says, for everybody's use, it says the narrative was confusing, mentioning a two-pronged approach, 3 steps and 4 cohorts. It became difficult to follow. And I actually, in reading what was under the introduction, which mentioned, the two-pronged approach and the 3 cohorts. 4 cohorts. I was watching, and the first thing you see is 3 steps. It was, in other words, again, we're talking about people who are going to be training people to write grant proposals. And of course, the first thing you want them to do is be, well, clear and do things sequentially. And I mean, did anybody else find that confusing? 2 prongs and 3 service areas and 4 cohorts, all within one introduction practically. I did my homework, Paul.
Yes, you did.
I'm retired, I can. I mean, that's not out there, is it? You would.
It's yes, ma'am. And in the proposal, we actually had them design it based on cohorts, specifically for the communities of practice for unselected applicants, which is service line 2. We actually asked them to, we asked them to design it that way based on our anticipated funding cycles. So it could be related to that because we will be issuing out cycles. So again, this is something that if the evaluation team chooses to advance this particular proposal into the negotiation phase, that information can go with the negotiators to provide that needed clarity.
Well, can you, in the evaluation process, can you talk to them about concerns like the reference letters? And I mean, it wouldn't even necessarily be, a pass fail, just we would really like you, if you probably will, this project, we would really like you to do this and that. There was another concern I had. Now, again, working for the state, et cetera, I'm used to the multi-million-dollar ones, of course, which we asked them for a doctoral dissertation, basically. Don't like that, but that's what happens. But I was a little surprised that in the timetable, there was 1 month left for them to do their application after the pre-application work and everything. Now, again, these might be very simple things they apply for, but typically, if you want to write a good proposal, you're going to spend all your time with your people, planning what you're going to do, getting their commitments, getting early on letters of reference with people you partnered. There are so many things beyond the control of the writer. See, here I go. But anyway, they really are. It's not a good proposal unless all that spade work is done. And so if that's handled early on in the process, that's good. But if that's all crunched into 1 month, I can tell you, I mean, Liza's not here, is she? When I was working for Liza and I needed XYZ to go in with a proposal, and some of the staff just, in your dreams, or I'm really busy, or this or that. And we didn't get the grant the first time. Now, we did get it the next year because she looked at them and said, if you don't give her what she wants in time, you're dead. And I got what I needed in time. And as a result, we were the first to get a statewide demonstration in that period. So anyway, we did a good job, but we only did a good job because all this work, paid work was done. And then if you're a decent writer, you don't have a problem putting it on paper.
Ms. McPhail, to Ms. Gershman's comments, and really just in general, and this is, I am anticipating moving to the next step and some sort of an oral presentation by the applicant. And so I think that the comments are important so that they can speak to the comments. And I'm looking forward to more of, you know, an oral. I'm like, I just want to sit there and listen and feel confident that combined, that it isn't this group talking and this group talking, because that is not collaboration.
Right.
And I think she makes a very good point. Again, both impressive applicants alone. Combined, it's sort of a cool concept. Yeah, it's a cool concept. I'd just like to sort of like chocolate, peanut butter. Oh my gosh, Reese's, right? It's a whole lot better.
Yes.
But I just want to make sure it's, you know, enough chocolate, enough peanut butter.
So just to your point, look, it's everyone here can absolutely see that the applicants are here. So they are they are in the audience. No. And the reason I say that is because not only will we reiterate and pass the comments on, as all of it is public record, they are actually here and can hear everything that you're saying. The candor is important, and your true feelings, that is important. If in fact we move forward to that next stage, there can be tweaks and they can take all of that information to ensure that there is a confidence moving forward.
And I'll just add to that, is that's one of the reasons why the council was very adamant, actually, can I say who? Yeah, I'm in the public. So Ms. McFadden was actually very adamant that we do this as an invitation to negotiate, specifically so we can have that oral presentation, that we can have a Q&A, and that we will give them the opportunity to do something called a best and final offer, where we give them feedback and say, tweak your proposal and give it back to us so that we can feel when the whole process is done, what is put before the council to either approve or reject. That the committee members and the team members who worked on the process feel very confident about that final selection, to all of your points. So we are recording, it is being live streamed. The applicants are in the room, but even had they not been here present, all of this would be made available.
I was just going to ask, at that point, the competition is over, then can you then ask the the new almost grantees ask questions and they can answer them at that time, because there's no longer a competition. It's just, you know.
So there's still requirements in terms of the procurement process, and we do follow our procurement policy. And if it's not clarified in our policy, we do rely on the Florida statute and or the state statute regarding procurement. So we will continue to follow that process. But yes, there will be an opportunity for Q&A during the negotiation phase, not during the evaluation phase. So with that said, I think that so we'll kind of move on to service line 2. We're going to skip category 1 again. So this is looking for specialized qualifications and experience specific to service line 2. A quick review of what that was is to establish communities of practice or cohorts for unselected applicants. So anyone who submitted an application for one of the CSC rounds of funding, if they were not selected. This past summer, what CSC Leon was able to do is offer a kind of a debriefing. We did it one-on-one and as a group. So as a group, we said these were on average some of the things that were missing and things that you could have improved on. And then one-on-one, we provided like kind of targeted comments specific to theirs. What we didn't do is then follow up with dedicated technical assistance, dedicated training due to staff capacity. So that's where our capacity builder partners will kind of swoop in or kind of come right alongside of, and then do all of that follow up to help them make an application the next time. Ideally, that would be a stronger application based specifically on their needs. So that's what this service line 2 was all about. I will also just kind of say that training is a broad part of all of this. And so CSC staff will continue to do kind of broader training for the entire community. And for those who are selected, to make sure, to Mr. Renzi's point earlier, to make sure that they're accountable, that they're following their contract deliverables. If they're struggling any, we actually have a person on staff, and she's actually Miss Stephanie, who's with us today, as well as our director of operations. But that's our program accountability and research manager. So those that receive our funds will be getting kind of assistance in making sure that they're performing with the assistance of us. Something that we said last summer and that we'll continue to say is that we're partners in success with the individuals who are funded. So once they're funded, they become our partner, and then that kind of capacity work really falls on our tiny but mighty team. But for those that don't, that's where our capacity builders will kind of supplement the work that we're doing, complement the work that we're doing. So with that, category 1 was should have been the exact same scores as before. So category 2, that's a specialized qualifications. Again, they could have had a 15. It does appear that you almost scored it identical, but that wasn't necessarily the case. The average was a 13, with the lowest score being an 11 and the highest score being a 15. And that gives them an average of an 86.7. Do any members of the evaluation team care to make a comment on your scores specific to category 2 for service line 2?
Holly, let me jump in very quickly, because there is a difference on the form for category 1, service line 1, and category 2, service line 2, category 1. So the scores aren't exact, and I just want to correct the record on that. That's the only reason I'm jumping in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it does appear on the first column, correct? So that was Ms. Gershman. Just if you wanted to make a comment on it, you're more than welcome to.
Well, I looked at them. I did look at them differently in terms of how they lined up with actually participating in a grant competition, as it were, and then working. I shouldn't even laugh about this, but working with the people who didn't get it. And I did want to mention it on occasion. I was with the state then, we had a couple of people that didn't get it, and you wanted them to. They needed it. They put in the worst proposals in the world. So when the whole thing was over, and then they call you, and they do ask, anybody can call you and ask, and I don't write them a new one, but we go through a lot of it on the phone. And I did that. The next year, same group submitted. They submitted the same proposal again. And of course, they tanked again. And that's why I laughed. But anyway, I do see a big difference between the follow-up and the original ask.
Thank you.
So I'll make a comment. While I use this framework to score the proposal, how we were asked, I definitely took into consideration, again, my community lens and knowing how these organizations work and what they actually do. And so for the service line 2, I was able to, just from personal relationship and experience with nonprofits who have been a part of these particular organizations, specifically UPHS, coming with concept of work. Like I want to have a nonprofit, right? And building from, this is something in my heart, to actually being funded, whether it's small pieces of money or just capacity building to do the service well in the community. There's several examples of that. I'm pretty sure when you all get to the next phase, you'll hear more about that. But I was able to have that particular frame of mind when thinking about this, and just imagining having cohorts who are able to do community of practices where they will specifically understand what that need assessment says, what services they offer, how it fits, or maybe how they don't know it fit, right? The work that they're doing isn't necessarily on paper, but needs to be fleshed out on paper, that, this can help, right? And then you have any who is this resource of other nonprofits that are all in one place that are like mentors, right? Or could be. in that way. And so when I thought about that piece, I'm like, I'm excited to see what this could look like in that cohort form, in a kind of one-on-one for people who don't know about all this world, but really want to become engaged and serve in the community, but don't have the resources to do that and want to sincerely be prepared. And to your point, those who want to do the work and who want to submit a good proposal will take that information and then do better, right? And then we see, okay, we learn that our pots of money locally is limited. So we can't all get out of these pots. How do we get that state and that federal money to trickle down? And hopefully that's what we see an expansion of in this process. That's what I'm hoping for. So that's kind of how my scores went into understanding the work that's happening, understanding the organizations that have already benefited from some form of capacity building in this way, who were not funded at all, who were using their own money maybe out of their pockets, or just not knowing what to do. And so having put in resource to the work and then a process to the work, I believe we can see what we're trying to get to in community. So that's kind of my explanation.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Any other comments about service, about category 1 or 2 related to service line 2? So then we'll get into the meat and the potatoes of category 3, the quality, clarity, and responsiveness of the service description for communities of practice for those unselected applicants. Points available were 50. The range of scores here, the average was a 39.8, with the lowest score being a 30 and the highest score being a 48. That ends up with an average score of a 79.6. Would any members of the evaluation team care to talk about their scores?
I know somebody's going to say, don't bring her back again. But anyway, this is a bigger thing, and I guess it's the only place to put it. I did notice, and a little bit I talked about, I guess, in the comments, I'm not sure, but I did notice that both in the rescue funds, the whole application process for that, forget the acronym.
ARPA.
Yeah, ARPA, yeah.
CARES and
I noticed that there were things like asking them about the reporting and the budget and that kind of thing. But in general, I always look at a grant as, what is the grantor buying? What per unit is the cost against the budget they give you? And I didn't see in the ARPA process, and I really didn't see in the statement of work where they're asked, you know, I hate the word objectives, but what I'm talking about is working objectives. What are you going to achieve with this money? And will it be done within, you know, the limits of phase 1, 2, or whatever it is? I just didn't see that. And maybe those were different kinds of grant proposals. Maybe ARPA just wanted the money out and they didn't worry that much about what would be achieved on a unit basis. I don't know, but that's a big concern. Can we use mine?
No, I really been at this table. I don't know.
it's about
well,
the slow press, Paul.
Yeah. Usually it's just Barbara, I don't know what everybody else in this room is thinking, but I'm going to speak for myself and say, I hope we invite you back again and again and again.
But we were friends.
It is clear to me that Barbara and I worked at the Department of Education together in 99 and 2000. And I remember she reviewed things with a lot more zeros at the end, and having an eye for detail is important. And I'll explain this to anybody who cares to listen. Having an eye to detail, those applicants during the summer phase, the applications that I reviewed, none of them were terribly impressive to me. Really, I wouldn't have graded any of them as well as the evaluation team. But it was important that we showed this community that we were going to take their money and fund programs. Programs that actually delivered services to children. So it's important that if we are going down this path and we are going to spend, you know, the proposed budget, a little less, a little more, it sounds like, gosh, they can barely, I mean, they're already working with a couple of the applicants who failed, and after I forget how many months, they still that everyone have the same eye for detail as Ms. Gershman has. And I'll just tell you again, as the guy who had to sign off on the final payment for a lot of money, I always counted on Barbara's ability to go through and find where they're missing and where they're lacking. So I hope that you participate in every evaluation team.
That's decades of experience, you know, I'm no young chick. But I also was at your end. I was a provider for many years, and which is showed me how to write them, you know. I should tell you though, if you get a chance to review any of them, anybody's proposal anywhere, I learned as much from that experience about how to write a grant proposal than I did in doing it. And I applied that, of course, in the future. So always volunteer, even though you look at it and go, oh, God, did I say I'd volunteer for this? Do it.
Thank you. So with that, at this point, I want to ask, as it relates specifically to the scores, we did ask some questions related to their budget. Is it in the right format? Is it advertised? Is it in the advertised range, et cetera? So you kind of see some yeses and nos there. But at this point, does anybody want to make any adjustments to the score, to their final score sheet that they've submitted based on any of the comments that you've shared with one another to finalize the record before we move into the next discussion phase?
Can I get a clarification?
Can you turn on yours? Is it already on?
I feel like I did not turn it off because I was.
Okay. Just pull it, yeah. I just want to make sure. Do you see the little green light? Perfect, thank you.
I want to get some clarification on the budget piece because I did put a no there. Is it $150,000 over for the whole contract, or is it per year?
For the whole contract.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the reason I put a no is because in looking at the budget, the way it was laid out, it looked like it was over the 150. So if any of the other evaluators can clarify that to me, then I can look at adjusting that.
I'll tell you why I put yes. Yeah, and I thought about the exact point. I saw what our budget was. I saw that they were over by about 21,000. So that means they're not in budget. I also think perhaps not correctly, but that in my mind, I was like, yeah, but this is 20 months, I think is what the proposal suggested. I thought, okay, all right. I'm going to put yes for two reasons. One, because it's 20 months and not the kind of the 1 year that was in the back of my head. And two, because this is an invitation to negotiate. And what they are saying is, hey, you guys threw out a budget. It's fine. Like, you know, if I'm going in to buy a new Porsche, I bring $11,000 to the table and I say, here you go. And they're like, no, that'll get you, you know, a couple tires. So, you know, pound sand. I think that is why I put a yes. Again, I really thought they were good. They did a good job at answering our questions. And I didn't want to give a negative mark And that's the only reason I put yes. But what went through my mind is exactly what went through your mind.
And same here. I'm not a rule follower. I saw the overage and I'm like, they gonna probably need more than that. If y'all, we're dreaming in Leon County right now with this money, right? Like it's a blessing to have it and we want to get it right. So I love the attention to detail. It makes us think, right? Because we get really flowery and warm about the work we want to do. And I'm just being very honest, it's a lots of work to do. And so asking ourselves those hard questions and really drilling down allows us to be perfect and accountable. So don't feel, any way about it. So I appreciate that it helps us just do it well, because there are people who are looking to find ways to criticize these processes and how things are rolling out. So it's definitely necessary. But I too put yes, and I was gonna be like, no, and I'm like, heck yeah, they need more money. So they're in the budget range. Because if we do this right, $150,000 or 170 something over the course of 20 months, we'll find we'll need much more, because there's over 600 nonprofits in this city, right? 800 nonprofits in human services alone to children alone. And so if we do this right and we identify the people who fit in that needs assessment box, right? And then those who could potentially fit to meet the need, I promise we'll probably be back here in 20 months talking about how we need to continue and maybe looking at more money. So that was my yes.
No, you go ahead and I will.
I think from the whole conversation, I think in looking at the process, I think the word negotiation is a key.
And I also want to emphasize, and I really believe that Councilmember Mitchell is gonna appreciate this comment. The capacity building is to definitely work with providers who are going to be able to do it. So to the point of 800 human service providers, nonprofits for children in this area, just for the record, there is no way that we should expect that at some point, all 800 of them will meet muster and be able to apply for funding and receive funding, because we want to develop the best. And that is never going to be the whole pot to that point. So I don't want there to be a thought out there that, oh, this capacity building is going to help each and every one of them be able to come to the council and receive funding. That is just not true. However, we do want to make the inroads to begin to have the best of the best so that we can move the needle and however incrementally move that needle and know that the accountability is there, the outcomes are there, the outputs are there, and we can show our community that we really are being good stewards of the money that they've entrusted to us.
So to answer the legal question of yes and no, I appreciate all of the conversation. And again, that's why we record this. That's why we make it available, especially as we think about going into that negotiation phase. For scoring purposes, CSC chose specifically not to score the proposed pricing, but you should consider it in that best value analysis of whether or not they will move forward into negotiation. And then for the negotiation team, they will also consider that as they make that determination. To Mr. Mitchell's point earlier, is it the budgeted amount? Was that too little? Was it too much? And have that negotiation. So that's why these were yeses and nos, to just help guide the process and the discussion, as opposed to it being, so if you said no, because technically, right, it was technically over. But if you said no, that doesn't mean that they're no longer eligible to move into negotiation phase. So really about the kind of the points the points awarded is really the part that we'll kind of hone in on and make sure that kind of this range is right and we all feel good about the scores that you gave. So I want to ask one more time, is there any revisions to any of your individual scores on either service line 1 or 2 for categories 1 through 3? Okay. So then the score sheet as published will stand, and that moves us into the next phase of the agenda. And that is a discussion on does this evaluation committee team want to make the recommendation to move this response into the negotiation phase?
Ms. McPhail, I would like to make a motion that we do just that, that we take this proposal and we move it into the negotiation phase.
There is a motion on the table with a second from Dr. Gaines. Is there any discussion on this motion?
Second.
All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor of moving this proposal into the negotiation phase, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And if there's no other discussion around that, we'll move into the part of the agenda of just team member comments. If you'd like to say anything for kind of final on the record before we move to adjournment.
Ms. McPhail, you want these back though, right?
If you made any edits, which we did not, so no, we do not need them back. Any comments? I know we've all kind of said a little bit, but I just kind of last opportunity. I'll turn it over to our executive director to kind of close us out. Thank you.
So again, I have to say thank you for doing this and serving in this capacity for the CSC of Leon County. Ms. Barbara, you will be invited back. Do not worry. We want to have as many acumen.
I'll be on time. I'll scope out the parking garage.
No worries, skills. And I think more importantly, it's important for the citizens of Leon County to understand that because of the way this council is funded, they are all investors. If you own property, you are investors and you have a stake in how this money is being used and the outcomes that we get. So just thank you.
Oh, thank you to Dina for doing all the work that gets us together, continuing to be in communication.
If you're going to speak, you need to.
Thank you so much.
Volunteer.
I really do appreciate your commitment to this process. I know I send a lot of emails and follow-ups, but you guys were all on top of it, providing everything that we needed and hopefully helping us get to the point where we are investing in our community and our investment partners will be able to do more for the children and families that we serve. So thank you so much for your time. It is very much appreciated.
Hey, one final point, and this is, I guess, really to Holly, and that is for future ITNs, RFPs, RFQs, RFI. Could we make sure that there is a provision put into the procurement document, whichever path we go, that asks the respondents to provide copies, printed copies of their proposals multiplied by the number of people who are on the evaluation team. While I appreciate technology and the fact that we are on a file share, trying to evaluate through my cell phone at sometimes, through my iPad at sometimes is absurd. It is absolutely absurd. So, and it is not certainly the respondents' fault. Hence the reason I have so much paper, because I tried printing, my assistant tried printing, Dina was kind enough to finally get me just one final version of it so that I could read it. And it was, and kind of make little mental notes to myself. And that was very helpful. So just for future procurements, I think it'd be a good idea.
And if we don't do that, we will be in an office and can provide printed copies to all of our evaluators.
Well, it really should be the respondent's responsibility, not yours.
We can absolutely do that. Not a problem.
It's not unusual. That's
No,
not-
it's very common, actually, and it specifies how it's supposed to be done. And, I mean, it is, so I was like, I'll share.
Well, when
What
you,
the heck?
And I have done that, provided electronic as well as paper. I think we are a few tree huggers, so we were just trying to be environmental. However, you have spoken and we will ensure that we do that.
well, normally too anymore, so many grants are sought by, say, 10 times more applicants than you have money to fund. They become highly competitive. And then the program officials decide, well, there's other ways we can eliminate people. It has to be space and a half with these margins and da, 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 da. So it's not going to be unusual for anybody to ask, to make copies.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. And at this time, it is 11:17 and we are officially adjourning our meeting. Thank you.